I want to tell you about a woman named Dorothy. 70 years old, retired nurse, spent her whole career taking care of other people's health. Sharp, organized, on top of everything. At 68, she started slipping. Small things at first, then bigger things. She was doing everything right, eating well, walking every day, taking her medications, everything her doctor told her. And still, something was changing. What nobody told Dorothy, not her GP, not her specialist, not a single person in 40 years of medical appointments, was that her brain had 5 specific needs after 60 that are almost never discussed. Not diet, not exercise, not the usual advice. 5 specific things, backed by research, available to almost everyone, and almost completely ignored by mainstream medicine. My name is Jade, and today I'm going to tell you what those 5 things are, what they do, why your brain needs them so urgently after 60, and exactly how to get them. 5 things. By the end of this video, you will know all of them. Stay with me. Before we get to the 5 things, I need to explain something that changes the entire picture. Most health advice is written for a general adult population, people in their 30s, their 40s, maybe their 50s, and that advice gets handed to people in their 60s and 70s as if nothing has changed, but everything has changed. Think of your brain at 30 like a brand new engine, plenty of fuel, all the parts working, maximum power available. Now think of the same engine at 65, still running, still powerful, but the tolerances are tighter, the reserves are smaller. The things it needs to run well, things it could get away without at 30, have become non-negotiable. That is what happens to the brain after 60. Certain processes that were automatic become effortful. Certain nutrients the brain could synthesize from scratch now need to come from outside. Certain protective mechanisms that ran in the background without help now need deliberate support. The brain is not broken after 60. It is not giving up. It is asking for things it was not asking for before, and most people have no idea what those things are. Let me ask you something. When did you last have a conversation with a doctor that lasted more than 15 minutes and focused entirely on your brain health? Not your blood pressure, not your cholesterol, your brain. If you are struggling to remember one, that conversation has probably never happened. That is the gap. That is what today closes. Here is what your brain desperately needs after 60. Starting with the one that surprises people the most. Most people have heard of creatine. They think it is something young men take at the gym, a bodybuilding supplement, something to do with muscle. And they are not wrong. But here is what nobody talks about. Creatine is not just for muscles. Your brain runs on it. Specifically, your brain cells use creatine to produce energy. Every thought you have, every memory you form, every word you search for, all of that requires cellular energy. And creatine is one of the primary fuels that makes that energy production possible. Here is the problem after 60. Your body's ability to synthesize creatine naturally declines with age. And your diet, unless you are eating large amounts of red meat every single day, is not giving you enough to compensate. The result is a brain quietly running low on fuel. Think of it like a phone battery that is always at 40%. Everything still works, but slower, dimmer, less sharp than it used to be. A study from the University of Sydney gave older adults creatine supplements for just 6 weeks. The results were striking. Measurable improvements in memory and cognitive processing speed. Not subtle improvements, measurable ones, documented, peer-reviewed. And in 2023, a major analysis published in Nutrients reviewed the entire body of creatine research in older adults. The conclusion was consistent. Creatine supplementation improves cognitive performance in people over 60, especially under mental stress, especially in tasks requiring working memory. The dose that appears in the research is 3 to 5 grams daily. Creatine monohydrate, the cheapest and most studied form, dissolved in water or juice, taken at any time of day. Does this sound like something your doctor has ever mentioned? If not, you are not alone. Almost nobody in mainstream medicine is having this conversation, and yet the evidence has been building for years. Magnesium. You have probably heard of it. Maybe you even take it. But here is the critical thing that almost nobody is told. Not all magnesium reaches the brain. Most magnesium supplements, the cheap versions in most drugstores, use a form called magnesium oxide. It absorbs poorly, and it does not cross the blood-brain barrier effectively, which means it does almost nothing for your brain, even if your blood levels look fine. There is a specific form of magnesium that was developed specifically to reach brain tissue. It is called magnesium L-threonate, and the research behind it is some of the most compelling in cognitive neuroscience. Here is why it matters so much after 60. Magnesium plays a direct role in something called synaptic plasticity. That is, your brain's ability to form and strengthen connections between neurons, to learn, to remember, to adapt. As magnesium levels in the brain decline, which they do with age, synaptic plasticity deteriorates. The brain becomes less flexible, less able to form new connections, less able to recover from damage. A study from MIT, published in the journal Neuron, found that raising magnesium levels in the brain using magnesium L-threonate improved learning ability and working memory in aging animals, so significantly that researchers described it as reversing aspects of brain aging. That phrase, reversing aspects of brain aging from a single compound from MIT, published in Neuron. Let that land for a moment. The dose used in human research is typically 1.5 to 2 grams of magnesium L-threonate daily. It is available without a prescription. It is not cheap compared to standard magnesium, but the difference in what actually reaches your brain is not comparable. If you currently take magnesium and it says oxide on the label, you are very likely getting the muscle cramp and constipation benefits, but not the brain benefits. That distinction matters enormously. This is the one that gets the most pushback. Cold water, cold showers, cold exposure. And I understand the reaction. Nobody wants to be told to stand in cold water. But here is what the research actually shows. And I want to be precise about this because the mechanism is genuinely remarkable. When your body is exposed to cold, even briefly, it triggers a release of a protein called norepinephrine. In the brain specifically, norepinephrine surges to levels 2 to 3 times above baseline. Why does that matter? Norepinephrine is one of the primary regulators of focus, attention, and mood. It is also a powerful anti-inflammatory. Specifically, it reduces inflammation in the brain. The chronic, slow-burning neuroinflammation that underpins cognitive decline. A study published in the European Journal of Applied Physiology found that cold water immersion, even at temperatures of 14 degrees Celsius, produced a 300% increase in norepinephrine levels. 300% from cold water. But here is the part that matters most for people over 60. You do not need immersion. You do not need an ice bath. Research from Dr. Andrew Huberman's laboratory at Stanford suggests that even a 1 to 2 minute cold shower, consistently several times a week, produces meaningful norepinephrine elevation and measurable improvements in mood and focus over time. 1 to 2 minutes, several times a week. That is all. Dorothy tried this. She was skeptical. She started with 30 seconds cold at the end of her regular shower, then built to a minute, then 2. She described it like this. She said it felt like someone had cleaned a window she did not know was dirty. That is norepinephrine. That is real. Let me ask you this. When did you last do something that felt genuinely invigorating? Not comfortable, not routine, but actually invigorating. If you cannot remember, your norepinephrine levels may be telling you something. This is the most misunderstood one on the list. Most people have heard that social connection is good for the brain. Loneliness is bad. Stay connected. See your friends. That is true, but it is only half the picture. And the half that nobody talks about is the one that actually drives the cognitive benefit. Here is the distinction. Passive social contact. Watching television with someone, sitting in the same room, having the same conversation you always have, does not meaningfully challenge the brain. It is comfortable. It is warm, but it is not cognitively demanding. What the brain needs after 60 is social challenge, new people, disagreement, negotiating, persuading, being persuaded, learning someone's perspective that is different from your own. The kind of conversation where you have to think, really think about what you are saying and why. Think of your brain's social circuits like a muscle. A muscle that is never challenged stays the same size or shrinks. A muscle that is consistently challenged adapts, grows stronger, builds reserve. The research on this is striking. A study from the Rush Memory and Aging Project, following over 1,100 older adults for 5 years, found that the frequency of cognitively stimulating social activity was a significant predictor of cognitive resilience. Not just the quantity of social contact, the quality and challenge of it. People who engaged in novel social situations, new conversations, new groups, new perspectives, maintained cognitive function significantly better than those whose social lives were comfortable but unchallenging. Let me ask you something direct. When did you last have a conversation with someone new? Someone whose life looks completely different from yours. Someone who made you think about something in a way you had not considered before. If it has been a while, that is not just a social observation. That is a brain health observation. The fix is not complicated. A new class, a volunteer role, a book club with people you do not already know well, a community group around something you have always wanted to try. The brain does not care about the format. It cares about the challenge. Give it something new, and it responds. The fifth thing is related to the fourth, but it is distinct, and it is probably the one most people are getting completely wrong. Word puzzles, Sudoku, brain training apps, crosswords. These feel like brain exercise. They feel productive. They feel like exactly the right thing. The research says something more complicated. These activities are not useless, but they primarily strengthen the specific skills they practice. If you do crosswords every day, you get better at crosswords. The transfer to broader cognitive function is limited. What the brain needs after 60 is something different, something genuinely hard, something where you are a beginner, something where you fail regularly, something that feels uncomfortable because it is new and you are not good at it yet. Here is why. When you learn something truly new, a language, a musical instrument, a new craft, a skill that requires both mental and physical coordination, your brain is forced to build entirely new neural pathways, new connections between neurons that did not exist before. This is what researchers call cognitive reserve, the redundancy that protects against decline. When existing pathways are damaged by aging, the brain falls back on alternatives. The more alternatives it has built, through genuine challenge and genuine learning, the more resilient it becomes. A study from the University of Texas followed older adults who learned a complex new skill, digital photography or quilting, for 3 months. They showed significantly greater improvement in memory than those who did familiar activities or passive leisure. 3 months. A genuinely hard new skill, measurable memory improvement. Think about something you have always wanted to learn but told yourself it was too late for. It is not too late. The research says the opposite. The brain at 65 and 70 is still remarkably capable of building new pathways. It just needs the stimulus. It needs something hard enough to demand it. Dorothy chose the piano. She had never played. She was terrible at first. She laughed about how bad she was. But she kept going. At her follow-up 3 months later, her word finding had improved. Her recall was sharper. Her mood was better. She said something I think about often. She said, "I stopped feeling old the moment I became a beginner again." 5 things. Let me bring them together clearly. 1. Creatine monohydrate, 3 to 5 grams daily, your brain's energy currency, declines with age, almost never discussed. The research on cognitive improvement in over 60s is consistent and compelling. 2. Magnesium L-threonate, not magnesium oxide, the form that actually crosses the blood-brain barrier, supports synaptic plasticity. The research from MIT used the word reversing. That is not a word researchers use lightly. 3. Cold exposure. 1 to 2 minutes of cold water several times a week. The norepinephrine surge it triggers reduces brain inflammation and sharpens focus in ways that are measurable and repeatable. 4. Social challenge. Not just social contact. New people, new conversations, new perspectives. The brain's social circuits need challenge, not comfort, to stay sharp. 5. Purposeful learning. Something genuinely hard. Something you are a beginner at. Something that makes you fail and try again. This is what builds cognitive reserve. This is what the brain falls back on when pathways are damaged. Now, one important thing before I let you go. 3 of these 5, creatine, magnesium L-threonate, and cold exposure, are things you can start this week without a single medical appointment. The other 2, social challenge and deliberate learning, cost nothing and require nothing except a decision. But if you are managing kidney disease, heart conditions, or are on multiple medications, please speak to your doctor before starting any new supplement. That is not a legal disclaimer, that is genuine advice. The context matters. Pick one. Start this week. One thing from this list done consistently for 30 days. Then add another. Dorothy did exactly that. One thing at a time, over 6 months. She called me recently. She said the crossword she used to do in pen, she has started doing the harder one, the cryptic. That is not luck. That is a brain that was given what it needed. Here is the thing that stays with me about these 5. None of them are on the standard checklist. None of them come up in a 15-minute appointment. None of them are on a prescription pad. They exist in research journals, in neuroscience labs, in the work of scientists who study the aging brain with genuine curiosity and genuine hope. And the gap between that research and the average person sitting at home, wondering why their mind feels different, assuming it is just age, assuming nothing can be done, that gap should not exist. That is why this channel exists. If this video gave you something useful, please share it. Think of someone in your life who is doing the same things they have always done and wondering why their brain feels different. Someone who has been told everything looks fine and yet knows something has changed. Send this to them. That one action might be worth more than anything else you do today. Take care of that brain. It has been working for you every single day of your life. Give it what it is asking for. Everything in this video is based on published, peer-reviewed research and is for educational purposes only. It is not medical advice. Before starting any new supplement, especially creatine or magnesium, please speak with your doctor, particularly if you have kidney disease or are on medication. That conversation is always worth having.